Wow, look at that.
Brian Thomas Jr., the wide receiver from LSU. So what do we think? Instant reactions. Steve, you kind of made a face towards Sam. What's your immediate reaction here?
Well, Sam definitely has some strong Brian Thomas Jr. takes. He was the consensus wide receiver 4, right? So there's the big 3 that have already come off the board. The consensus wide receiver 4 is Brian Thomas Jr., 19 on the consensus board. It goes here at 23, so that's the expectation. Big guy, big threat, deep threat. Don't think he's as polished and all-around receiver as some of the other guys. Sam? Go for it.
Yeah, look,
back to you guys.
So he's a big, fast receiver that has, incredible traits, but I think there's a lot of concern that he is very much a one-trick pony at the moment. And the question is he ever going to be more than that? Like, you can't teach the things that he's got down, which is that size, the 4.3 speed, but 75% of his yards came on go routes and hitches, right? That's quite one-dimensional. The offense there obviously put him in a ton of position to succeed. There were, scout and coach quotes that said, you don't actually see him getting open that much as him being open because of the scheme. And if you look at the best cornerbacks that he faced, most of them handled him pretty well. Like, a lot of his production came against guys that aren't particularly good corners. So I think there's definitely reason to believe that twitchiness, that speed, the capacity is there for him to be a much better player in the NFL than he is right now. But if he doesn't become that, he's a one-trick pony whose one trick is being slowly taken out of the league by the way defenses are changing.
Well, and the other part of this is it's very easy to talk about Brian Thomas's speed because we saw multiple plays where he just ran away from everybody, scored touchdowns, big deal. I mean, it really was. It was flashy. But Adonai Mitchell is just as fast. And Ladd McConkey ran 4.39. So if you're going to go, so we're talking about over 6 or 7 hundredths of a second, we're going to choose. And now if you're going, all right, take the speed element out of it, now which receiver do you like the best? Right. I think it's a really hard call.
Look, and here's the thing now. With no Calvin Ridley on the team, Brian Thomas Jr. and Gabe Davis basically play the same role.
Yes.
So now they have to double this role. So in order for this pick to work out, because again, kind of like you said, if you believe that Brian Thomas Jr. can be a much more well-rounded receiver, then I think that works out for Jacksonville no matter what because he's really talented.
Right.
But at the time being, what he is, him and Gabe Davis basically are the exact same thing. So is Jacksonville's offense, is Press Taylor and Doug Peterson, are they going to be more willing to just be a vertical shot offense? To really push down the ball down the field a lot? Because if they're not willing to do that, then they're either going to be redundant or they're going to be putting one of their receivers in a place where they're just not naturally going to win this
And
year.
why did you let Calvin Ridley walk out the door?
And that just makes the fumbling of Calvin Ridley's situation even worse. So
Christian Kirk is at his best running deep from the slot. Like they struggled last year.
Now has to be a completely vertical offense. So Trevor Lawrence is either going to throw for 5,000 yards this year or the Jags are not going to make the playoffs.
I am intrigued by that. I mean, look, we mentioned the name Gabe Davis throughout this process as a comp for Brian Thomas Jr. because there was rumors that the Jags might like him. And they might have redundant skill sets, but I'm kind of intrigued by, can you have both of those guys out there on the field at the same time? Gabe Davis is averaging over 17 yards per reception in his career, right around it. And Brian Thomas Jr. feels like that type of player. Where I'm concerned about him is I don't want him getting 150 targets a year. I don't think he can do that type of thing. So if Buffalo was going to get Brian Thomas Jr. and say, hey, go replace Stephon Diggs, that didn't feel like a good fit.
Right.
But in this offense where Christian Kirk's going to get probably the most volume now, Evan Ingram, those guys are working underneath, intermediate. Zay Jones is in there kind of as a possession type, and then Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. as the vertical threats. I think it can work. It's just like you don't have that true number one high volume guy still. It's just a lot of different pieces put
and
together.
Let's give Brian Thomas a little credit here too, though. If you watch it from beginning to end, his last season, he was pretty bad early on. He looked a little intimidated going inside. He looked a little, I just wasn't. He didn't come back to the ball. He didn't do little things right playing receiver. And then you still saw the speed and go, okay, I get why people love him. By the end of the year, he was catching and running with some balls over the middle. He was running better routes. He was coming back to the ball. So if the progression from the beginning of the season to the end was an indication that he really was so raw at the beginning of that and he's growing into this,
right,
then this could work.
And you see flashes of it all the time on his tape. Like he has one incredible play against Florida State. The ball's dropped into a window on the sideline. He catches it and jumps inside almost in the same move and then outruns everybody to the end zone. Like, you can see why people love him that much. And every now and again you get a play where you're like, okay, that is special. It's just too much of it is one-dimensional. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to be much more multifaceted at the next level. But as you say, like now you're being put on a team where probably their top 3 receivers are all best running vertical.
Yeah, and I like this range for him. He's 25 on my big board. He goes 23 overall in the draft. And like you said, I think this is a player who you just kind of take a chance on because he's 6'3", he's 210 pounds, and he runs a 4.33. I mean, that's just, as a starter there, that's a Trent Baalke dude, right? I mean, like that is somebody that he was obviously going to be a fan of. So